This is Prop Points on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. We are with rotowire.com. Check us out, rotowire.com/VSiN for all of our written work and all sorts of good stuff there to cover things. Massive day, a massive show. We've got, of course, we're going to recap the Florida national title. We're going to look at the NBA slate. We got Len Hochberg coming down the progressive guest line, doing a little Masters preview. Got to get that Masters logo going there for us. And we're going to preview the MLB slate. But first, wow, Nick, we have a huge coach firing. 5 games before the end of the season. The Denver Nuggets have fired Mike Malone. They fired their GM. This is the coach that brought them their one and only title just 2 years ago. What the heck is going on here?
Look, a couple weeks ago, Jeff, we were on the show after the Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, and we talked about how unprecedented this is, how wild of a decision this was. And in light of what we just learned about, 20 minutes ago, we got this news that Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, the GM of the Denver Nuggets, were relieved of their duties, I think was the official term, which is just a little insulting, honestly, whenever that gets slapped around. I mean, this is far crazier to me than what we saw in Memphis. I think with the Grizzlies, you could scratch a claw and kind of find some reasons like, okay, this team is really slipping. It's hard to see a title contending path for the Grizzlies this season. You had the John Morant situation kind of behind the scenes that really made it difficult to evaluate, who's calling the shots there. But I mean, this is significantly wilder. I mean, Denver has 3 games left in the schedule. We got 6 days left in the regular season. And, like the Memphis Grizzlies, they will be in the playoffs. We don't know yet if they'll be in the play-in or not, but this is as shocking as it gets. You fire the head coach who brought your franchise its one and only championship. One thing I will say that's interesting, Jeff, is we have not seen any market shift quite yet in the Western Conference or championship odds for the Nuggets. They were 8-1 yesterday. They're 8-1 right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook. But I mean, you just let go of the winningest coach in the NBA over the last 5 years. Now, Denver is just 6-10 straight up in its last 16 games. They've lost 4 in a row heading into tonight, but Jokic has missed time in that span. So was Jamal Murray, including each of the last 5 games during that losing streak. So as we said with the Taylor Jenkins situation, more details will come out. I will say this, Mike Malone, notably prickly guy, can be difficult to get along with. He's had some falling outs earlier in his career in Sacramento. There had been some rumors out there, if you talk to people, that the front office and the coaching staff didn't necessarily see eye to eye. And that goes all the way back to last summer. But really, Jeff, I think this goes back 2 years. Denver won the title 2 seasons ago, and I think there's been some back and forth here as far as what the coaching staff wants, what some of the guys on this roster want versus what management and ownership want. Letting go of some key role players like KCP, like Bruce Brown. It's not like those guys are lighting it up, where they're playing now, but they were more valuable, I think, to Denver than they were other teams. A lot of those decisions came down to ownership not being willing to spend, and I think there's frustration right now with this Denver roster. The fact that you have the best player in the world having the best individual season that he's had, which is saying a lot when we're talking about Nikola Jokic. And I think if nothing else, Jeff, this decision tells you that ownership, management looked at this team and said, as currently constructed, with Calvin Booth as a GM, with Mike Malone as our head coach, we don't think we have a very good chance to win the title this season.
Yeah, that's all. It must come down to that, or there was just a heated showdown at some point there where the ownership's like, why aren't you guys doing better? And like, well, it's because we told you this and all that. But for the GM to go too, that's the part that gets me. That's the part that, pitches this as ownership versus, coaching in the front office there. I just, I'm flummoxed by this. I'm so flummoxed, and I'm barely reacting to back homers by the Tigers right now against the Yankees. But it is just crazy just to have this happen this time of year. As Money Moves was saying, this is the latest head coaching firing ever in the NBA. Ever. Yeah. You would think a non-contending team, like, okay, we're going to get rid of you just because, hey, it's time. We want to get we want to get a head start on the next season. No, that's not this. This is a team getting ready for the playoffs. A team that we expect to be competitive, in the just to have a real chance to win.
Right.
But no.
Again, there's virtually no precedent for this. I mean, Taylor Jenkins is the closest precedent we have, and obviously that happened just a few weeks ago. So, I think another way to look at this, Jeff, is you have to assume that Nikola Jokic was at least consulted on this. I'm not saying Nikola Jokic, marched up to the owner's office at Ball Arena and said, "Hey, get rid of Mike Malone or I'm out this summer." I don't think it was anything like that. But Jokic has been openly frustrated, especially if you watch these last few games. You can see the frustration. It's like, "Hey guys, I'm giving you 43, 18, and 11, and we're still losing, to inferior teams. We're still losing to the Indiana Pacers. Yes, that is a shot at your Pacers, Jeff Erickson, who are playing very well right now. But you don't make a decision like this when you have a player like Jokic. You have the best player, in my opinion, in the world. And frankly, by a pretty decent margin, all due respect to SGA. There's no way that you make this decision without Jokic at least giving you a wink, right? At least giving you I'm okay with this. This is not going to further upset me. So you have to view it from that perspective. I don't think this is probably a massive shock to Nikola Jokic and maybe some of the best players on this team. Now, the Calvin Booth part of this, I get. I think the defense of Calvin Booth is, okay, how much money was he given to play around with? Did he really have the freedom to do what he wanted with this roster? Were there constraints put on him by ownership financially? But Calvin Booth has openly, he's kind of touted his own draft picks quite a bit these last couple of years. And he's openly said, we don't really need to spend in free agency because we've made all these great picks, in the late first round and the second round. And, Christian Brown has turned out really well. I think he's been a really nice role player for Denver this season, but the Peyton Watsons, the Julian Strathers, the Jalen Pickett's, the Zeke Najis of the world, those guys have not really taken the next step that I think Calvin Booth essentially promised this team and this fan base that they would. So I'm not necessarily surprised that Booth is a part of this firing, and they had not reached a long-term contract deal, so the writing maybe was on the wall there. But again, the timing is the crazy part here. Who does this benefit? That's the first question that came to mind, Jeff. In theory, to me, it benefits OKC, right? I think that's a team like you're looking at Denver as, we don't necessarily want to play a 3-time MVP in Nikola Jokic. Now this team is in some degree of chaos. The Lakers, the Wolves, the Clippers, the Warriors. I mean, these are now the stable teams in the Western Conference. Could there be a case, though, that perhaps this does benefit the Denver Nuggets? We don't know what was going on behind the scenes. Again, we have to assume that Nikola Jokic was at least consulted on this, that this was something that to some degree he probably endorsed. It takes a lot to make a decision like this with 6 days left in the regular season. I'm not saying there's going to be a post-firing bump and this is going to spark the Denver Nuggets to a title run, but things had to be bad enough behind the scenes to make this decision, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I see it. I see it there. I am curious to see who this does benefit there too. We're going to talk a little Florida, Houston. We kind of buried the lead. It wasn't the lead anymore because of that there. But first, you want to know where the money is really going? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Wrong thing there. Sorry about that there. It is. Yeah, I was right the first time. Want to know where the money is really going? Unlike other sources, our betting splits come straight from Circa and DraftKings Sportsbooks, giving you insight into where the sharp action is landing. Circa is known for taking big bets from professional bettors, while DraftKings provides a broader market perspective. That means you're getting the real action, not just public money, but the kind of wagers that move lines. See the percentage of bets versus the percentage of handle on every game across every major sport, helping you make smarter, more informed bets. Get VSiN's summer special right now for only $59 until August 1st at VSiN.com/subscribe. Oh, by the way, Florida won the national championship last night. Fun game. I don't know if it's an incredible game. I thought it was a little bit of a sloppy game, Nick. But it was a fun back and forth game. Wild finish at the end. Shaky reffing. It had it all. It did have a lot of things going for it there as far as the talking points go.
I think we come out of this Final Four with 3 really memorable games. Even if the national championship last night was a bit sloppy, I thought it was extremely inconsistent on the refereeing side of things. Some missed calls, a tee to the Florida bench. Jeff, we had 4 total fouls called in the first half. This was an extremely fast first half. These type of games tend to be dragged out. You got commercials, you got things like that. That first half went by in like 40 minutes. There were 4 total fouls called, 26 fouls called in the second half. If you're going to call a game as loosely as they were in the first half, you would like to think that would be at least semi-consistent in the second half. Probably not going to go 4 fouls in each half, but that's quite a discrepancy, 4 and 26. Florida was extremely sloppy early on. Like you said, Walter Clayton held scoreless in the first half. Kind of another underwhelming first half for this Florida team that's had a few of those throughout this tournament. I'm thinking about Alex Condon traveling like 3 times in 5 minutes. Just did not look like he was ready to be out there, and did turn things around for the most part in the second half. But Jeff, we've talked about this with Houston specifically and really a number of these top teams throughout the tournament. I thought Houston missed a big opportunity in the first half when Florida played about as badly as you could possibly expect. I think they had 9 or 10 turnovers, shooting under 40%, and Houston just couldn't capitalize. They were terrible from three. They were barely shooting 40% in the first half. And I thought it was a miracle. If you're Florida going into the locker room after playing that half and only being down 3, I thought that was incredible. And you kind of felt like that run was coming at some point for Florida. Houston was all over the offensive glass early in the game. Just an unbelievably aggressive team. I thought Florida did a great job addressing that at the first time out. They were making a point to get bodies on bodies and got that cleaned up the rest of the way. But of course, Jeff, it came down to turnovers for Houston. They had 4 turnovers in the first 35 minutes and 35 seconds of game time, turned it over 5 times in the final 3.5 minutes, including 4 in a row to end this game.
And including that crazy sequence at the end where they couldn't even get the shot off. I actually thought it was good awareness that you couldn't touch the ball again. They tried to box out and all that, but just so little time left. What did you think about we got about 30 seconds left. What did you think about them forcing the 3 attempt as opposed to just running a normal offense there?
I actually didn't mind it. It took a long time to develop, but if Emmanuel Sharp just pump fakes, he has an open 3. I thought, it was like, it took 15 seconds for him to kind of run on that elevator screen, but the play was there, right? You could tell Houston had a plan. So I didn't mind it. You just got to execute. And, in retrospect, easy to say now, just touch the ball. You at least got a chance to foul and get it back.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true there. Also, my kingdom for getting rid of elevated floors in national title games. That was ridiculous. All right, going to talk a little basketball coming up next. This is Prop Points.
Watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Big NBA slate coming down here today. After a 2-game slate yesterday, kind of calm. Sacramento got a needed win. They're now they're a game over the Mavs and 2.5 games over the Suns. Critical for them there. But let's turn to our attention to tonight, Nick, because we got a lot going on here in the NBA, including Knicks and Celtics, the 2 versus the 3 right now. Jalen Brunson expected to play after returning over the weekend.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're right on Sacramento getting a big win last night. They were down almost 20 in the first half and looked like that was going to be yet another disaster letdown game against Detroit, but ended up rallying back. 10 games tonight. This is when it really starts, the sprint to the finish, Jeff, as far as the playoff positioning goes. Still a lot to be decided, in the middle of the Eastern Conference, virtually 2 through 10 in the West, somewhat up for grabs one way or another. Looking at the Celtics-Knicks game, I don't think you could play the side right now. There's just too many question marks for the Boston Celtics who, they're going to be the 2 seed. We know that at this point. They know it. They're not going to extend some of these guys down the stretch. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, all questionable. Jaylen Brown said recently, knee's not really feeling great right now. So I think he's the one that would probably be most likely to sit out. Meanwhile, Drew Holiday, Derek White, both probable. Al Horford will not play on the front end of a back-to-back. So that is the reason that this number is sitting where it is. Knicks back to full strength here. They are at home, but they are a 2-point favorite. Trying to kind of judge the prop market right now, also a little bit dicey, but in these situations where I think it's likely that at least 1, maybe 2 of those big 3 for the Celtics are sitting out, I always pivot to Derek White. Looking at the over 4.5 assists, you could find that minus 145 at DraftKings. Not a good price. Wouldn't mind pushing that, up to the 6+ assists to get you plus 125. It's not a great defensive matchup against the Knicks, but that number has hit in 7 of the last 8 games for White. Could also look into Derek White over 3.5 threes. That's a little bit more of a 50-50 prop to me, but the attempts always tend to be there. On the Knicks side of things, I'd look at OG Anunoby. I will say, Jeff, 16.5 is his points prop tonight. Suspiciously low number for a guy who scored at least 23 points in 10 straight games and 13 of his last 15. Obviously, Jalen Brunson missed a good chunk of those, but Jalen Brunson was back on Sunday, and Anunoby went for 32 points. Yes, it was against the Phoenix Suns. Yes, the Celtics are a different animal, but I'm still willing to take the bait here on Anunoby.
Yeah, I can get behind that as well. Lakers Thunder have a rematch from Sunday. Lakers had a big win, but as with everything else right now, it's a question of who's going to be able to play. that the Thunder are 15.5-point favorites suggests the Lakers are going to be benching a bunch of their stars.
Yeah, Jeff, I was excited to kind of buy back in here on the Thunder, but the number is 15.5 for a reason. LeBron, Reeves, Luka, Dorian Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, even all questionable for this game. It seems very, very likely if not all those guys will end up being held out. It is the front end of a back-to-back for the LA Lakers, who I think are playing the math here. You know, they are likely saving their guys to go all out tomorrow night against the Dallas Mavericks, a much more winnable game. Tomorrow will also be the Lakers' 5th game in 7 nights. So I think there is a little bit of pre-playoff load management perhaps at play here. And because of how the tiebreakers work, and because the Lakers hold the tiebreaker over virtually every team below them in the West, they only need to go 2-2 straight up over their last 4 games to lock up the 3 seed. So, you know, I think you'll essentially punt this game at OKC. You think you can win against Dallas tomorrow night. You get Houston on Friday, and by that point the Rockets may have the 2 seed locked up. Maybe you catch them resting some guys, and then you have a very winnable game on Sunday against Portland. So this is kind of adding up as a punt spot for the LA Lakers. We'll see if OKC counters with any rest of its own. Obviously, they already have the number 1 seed locked up. So this is mostly a stay away for me, Jeff, until we get official confirmation on both sides. But 2 props that I have jumped in on: Aaron Wiggins over 8.5 points, Isaiah Joe over 6.5 points. This is a night where I look to target those OKC role players who tend to be a little bit more insulated from a potential blowout or any rest.
Yeah, that sounds good. Timberwolves, Bucks. This is a big one for the Bucks, especially. They have a chance to pretty much lock in at least the 5. They're a game and a half up on the Pistons, who lost to the Kings yesterday. Timberwolves desperately trying to stay out of the play-in. It's so jumbled in the West that every game matters so much for those teams. What's your outlook on this game here?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Obviously, still no Damian Lillard for Milwaukee. No real updates on Dame as the postseason nears. But Bobby Portis eligible to make his return for the Milwaukee Bucks from his PED suspension. So we'll see if he starts. My guess is he comes off the bench, but it's not like he was coming back from injury. So I do think Bobby Portis, should be in form, should be ready to go. That does matter for Milwaukee, still battling for that 4, 5, 6 seed with Indy and Detroit in the East. I think this is an even bigger game, though, for Minnesota as they look to stay out of the play-in in the Western Conference. Like the Bucks are likely not going to be the 4 seed. Their aim right now should be to get that 5. Avoid playing the Knicks in round 1. They play New Orleans on Thursday, then they play Detroit on Friday and Sunday. So those final 2 games will likely end up deciding who gets the 5, who gets the 6. I think that's where the focus is going to be for Milwaukee. Bucks is 5.5-point dogs at home to me. Does feel a little bit steep, but I'm going to stay away from the side. I think you have to look at Giannis props, the way he's been playing lately, Jeff. Over 6.5 assists is one that I like tonight. He's got 41 assists over the last 3 games alone. And, Milwaukee has sneakily not been a very good rebounding team of late. So I think Julius Randle over 6.5 boards is something I would look at. Bucks bottom 5 in total rebound percentage over the last 10 games. Bobby Portis helps, but he doesn't help that much.
Yeah. T-Wolves could end up being 8th. They could end up being 3rd. It's just a wide range of outcomes for them. It's a fun little matchup there. I think that's the game I'm looking forward to the most on this slate tonight here. Yeah. Looking to stay ahead of the game, RotoWire has you covered with expert analysis, real-time updates, and the best fantasy and betting tools in the industry. Whether you're making picks, setting your fantasy lineup, or placing bets, our award-winning insights give you the edge you need. Get started today at rotowire.com/VSiN and take your game to the next level. That's rotowire.com/VSIN. Covering tonight's NBA slate with Nick Whalen here. Let's talk a little Warriors and Suns. The last time we have to mention the Suns, hopefully the rest of this season there. If they lose, they're out, basically. I think it's maybe not mathematically so, but with the Kings winning yesterday, it's pretty much must win for Phoenix.
Yeah, we are finally on the brink now for the Phoenix Suns. Obviously, they did not want to see Sacramento rally back and win that game. The Kings are technically now a game up on the Mavericks, so that's who the Suns are, I guess, having the crosshairs right now. No Kevin Durant tonight for the Phoenix Suns. There was some hope, I think, over the weekend that he could make his return. He will not be out there, and by the way, if he does miss one more game beyond tonight, he will be ineligible for any postseason awards. Any All-NBA teams would not meet that 65-game threshold. So something to keep an eye on there if you are looking at any markets for the postseason awards. I like Golden State here a lot. I think this should be an obvious bounce-back spot for Stephen Curry, who's actually struggled against Phoenix for the most part this season, but he is coming off of quite literally one of the worst games of his entire basketball career, Jeff, against Houston over the weekend. Suns could not be more of an opposite matchup than the Houston Rockets. This is the 29th ranked defense in the NBA over the last 10 games. They've dropped 6 in a row. All of those losses have come by double figures. So I like Golden State to roll here, win and cover for the Warriors. Phoenix just doesn't have the horses without Kevin Durant. I don't think they have the faith internally that they have any chance to rally and make the play-in. They're covering at just a 38% clip at home this season, and they failed to cover 7 games in a row. So give me the Warriors lay in 9.5. I would also take a look at that Warriors team total over 118.5.
All right. I like it there. One more game to highlight from tonight's slate: Spurs Clippers. Another big game in that 4-way tie. We got Minnesota playing tonight, Golden State playing tonight. There also Memphis is in that mix. What do we like in this Spurs Clippers game?
So Clippers are 12.5 point favorites right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook, which is a number that I think makes sense. Obviously a big game here for the Clippers. They're in a 4-way tie with Minnesota, Golden State, and Memphis. All 4 of those teams sitting at 46 and 32, but the Clippers do hold the tiebreaker over all 3. So, there is some kind of cross matching as far as some of these teams playing each other. It's tough to kind of work out the math on the fly, but the Clippers are in the best position of those 4 teams. Now they are on the front end of a back-to-back, which I think does put Kawhi Leonard's status in question. He is questionable on the injury report, did play his first back-to-back, however, last week. So this is one of those games where, ideally you don't want to have a letdown, right? You don't want to sit out Kawhi and then you lose this game to a Spurs team that's playing for nothing. But I would be cautious in approaching any Kawhi props if he is out there, because I think Wednesday night against Houston is just as important. You play the Kings on Friday and then finish out with the Warriors on Sunday, which could be a big one. So the fact that Kawhi is playing back-to-backs, the fact that he's pushing up, over 40 minutes in a few games of late, I think is a really good sign. But, the Clippers, I think, still do want to make sure they're not overextending him heading into the postseason. So if I have to pick a side right now, not knowing for sure about Kawhi, I would still lean Clippers here. The Spurs have just been all over the place of late. They can put up points. That's why we have a total, pushing up toward 230. It's at 227.5 right now at DK. But I would look at James Harden in the prop market here. I think this could be a spot one where Kawhi Leonard rests. And even if he doesn't, maybe he is on some sort of soft minutes restriction. So if you're looking for props in this game, take a look at Harden. 23.5 points is a decent one for me.
4th team in that 4-way tie. Memphis gets Charlotte tonight, too. So imperative for these other 3 teams to take care of business. We switch our conversation to the Masters. Come up, Len Hochberg on the Progressive Guest Line. You're on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Prop Points, Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson here with you, and it is Masters Week after all. We might have coach firings, we might have NBA games to preview, but the story in sports this week is the Masters tournament. And to help us preview it, to give us some DFS advice, some betting advice, our good friend, our golf expert over at rotowire.com, it's Len Hochberg. You can check him out on Twitter at Len Hochberg, and he joins us via the Progressive Guest Line. Len, very much excited to get into this tournament with you. You got some great work for us, which you can find over at rotowire.com. It's up on the site right now. Your Masters player rankings, your flagship DFS breakdown article. Before we get into your specific leans, some of the guys you're staying away from this week, I want to ask you, whether you're betting the Masters, whether you're putting together DFS lineups, how is preparing for this tournament specifically different than any other on the schedule, even the other majors?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick, and great to be with you guys. I really think there are some things that can't be quantified, like strokes gained this and strokes gained that for the Masters. I mean, it just gets in your head. I've never been down Magnolia Lane, but listened to enough players that even the most veteran players, when they drive down Magnolia Lane, it just changes. They get goosebumps. And I think some players are equipped to handle the biggest spotlight in golf and one of the biggest spotlights in sports. And some guys aren't. And some guys just don't do well in those situations. And I think that's one thing to take into account. And guys, that's why experience matters, and not only for the players in knowing the course, but in handling the moment. And that's why, for the most part, look for guys who can handle a moment, and we've seen handle a moment or come close to it.
Absolutely. And that's why also this course in particular requires a deft touch around the greens. It requires avoiding terrible first putts so you don't three putt any greens, things that you may not get at other places there. And that's why, certain players, maybe great golfers, they just don't have that there. Who's a horse for this course? Who's someone that you're like, okay, he is well suited for Augusta, outside of obviously Rory and Scotty, but who's someone that we're like, oh yeah, he's definitely a guy that's suited here?
Yeah, well, they say that Augusta is one of the most predictable, if not the most predictable week of the year. We do see guys come back and play well year after year after year. And even a guy like Phil Mickelson, who is well into his 50s now, can come here and play at this tournament because it is just so experience laden. It is so experience required. But horses for the courses, I mean, I talk to you guys all the time, talk to you for years about Cam Smith. He comes here because these guys who are great around the greens, Cam Smith, Patrick Reed, they're not the longest hitters by far, no pun intended, but we know that at Augusta it plays 75-55 on the scorecard. Some say it plays 7,900 in actualness, the way they mow the fairways against the grain and into blunt distance. But I think ultimately it comes down to the guys who handle themselves well around the greens, and they can repeat that on repeat every year after year after year. Cam Smith, Patrick Reed are two guys to come to mind who I think are a little bit lower down the board, and maybe was the point of your question, I hope.
Talking with Len Hochberg, he joins us on the Progressive Guest Line, previewing the Masters. Len, you just mentioned the word repeat, and that is exactly what Scotty Scheffler will be looking to do this weekend. He's 4-1 to win the tournament. The prohibitive favorite, you're really the only guy in the neighborhood, is Rory McIlroy at plus 650. Then you got a pretty big drop down to guys like Jon Rahm at 13-1, Schauffele 18-1, Morikawa 18-1. As we know, anybody who follows the Masters, we have not had a repeat champion since a little-known golfer named Tiger Woods back in 01 and 02. A trend like that, Len, does it scare you away at all from betting Scotty Scheffler, from throwing him in a DFS lineup?
It certainly gives me pause. And not only are there no repeat winners, or hardly any repeat winners, none in almost a quarter of a century, but the champion has a great deal of difficulty even finishing in the top 10 the next year. Talk about pressure and coming back and being big man on campus when you return to Augusta. That's the biggest man on the biggest campus. Only twice in the last 18 years has the defending champion even finished top 10 the next year. And one of those was Scotty Scheffler, who after his 2022 win came back in 2023 and tied for 10th. Just to close the thread, Jordan Spieth was the other one, 2015, 2016. So it does make it very hard. But that also the fact that Scheffler was able to finish top 10 better than most champions coming back gives me confidence that he can handle the moment again this year.
Does Rory have a shot to end his agony at Augusta? He's at plus 650.
As a journalist, as a writer, we root for the story. There would be no bigger story. There would be no, not only in golf, it might be the biggest story of the year. If Rory McIlroy, 10 years, we've been waiting for this fifth major. Not only that he would also become the sixth man to win the career Grand Slam. So many greats of the game have not completed the Grand Slam. And to join the elite group, Jack, Tiger, Gene Sarazen, Gary Player, Bobby Jones, I don't think I got that right off the top of my head there, would be just unbelievable. But I don't know if he can do it. I don't think he can do it. He has not been especially good at the Masters the last few years after some very, very close calls and some very, very good years. You would think, having won twice already this year, he is better positioned than ever before. Always something seems to go wrong for Rory at the worst possible moment.
More from our guy, Len Hochberg, in a moment. But first, we have a very fitting message from our friends at DraftKings. The battle for the jacket is heating up in Augusta. You can download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app to play free for a shot at the $1 million top prize with just a $10 deposit. It's simple to play. You build your dream lineup while staying under the salary cap. Then you sit back, and watch as your players rack up points. Available for all DraftKings customers. Just download the Daily Fantasy app for your free shot today. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 8887897777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. Minimum $10 deposit required. One single-use $10 ticket rewarded for Fantasy Golf Millionaire Contest that expires on April 10th at 7 a.m. See terms at DraftKings.com/promotions. Sponsored by DraftKings. Len Hochberg, our golf expert at RotoWire, joining us here on Prop Points on the Progressive Guest Line. Len, it's the first major of the year. We get a lot of the live guys back in the field, big names that we're used to watching on this course over the last several seasons. Jon Rahm, lowest odds of any live player. He's at 13-1. Are you in on Jon Rahm? And if not, any live guys you like this week?
Yeah, it's really one of the great unknowns, and it's just a annual thing now. We just don't know how they're going to do. I mean, last year we expected, a lot of people, me included, expected Jon Rahm, the defending champion, to come back and play well. Brooks Koepka to come back and play well after dueling with Jon Rahm throughout down the stretch of 2023, and neither one was competitive at all. They made the cut, finished far back. It really is, it throws a wrinkle, to say the least, into the whole scenario. I am not super high on Jon Rahm this year, not as high as the other guys in that upper level 5-figure guy on DraftKings, top guys. I like Scheffler better. I like Morikawa better. Even Ludwig Oberg a little bit better. But Jon Rahm is Jon Rahm, and he has a lot to prove this week. I think he is going to make every effort to prove me and everyone else wrong.
What do you think about Ludwig Oberg at 22-1? Was second in his debut, won an elevated event earlier this year, but his numbers lately haven't been as strong. You know, what are your thoughts on him this week at the Masters?
You know, one of the things we talked about at the very top, guys who can handle the moment, not only a major, but the Masters, maybe the toughest moment in golf. We saw Ludwig Oberg do that last year as a first timer at Augusta National. And he has slipped a little bit this season, or at least the last couple of tournaments. He's missed a cut the last couple of times, but missing the cut last week in San Antonio, I don't think is a big deal. I think just getting in 2 rounds was good for him. I do like his chances. I don't think he'll win, but I think we could see him on TV get some major minutes on Sunday.
All right, Len, we got about 26 seconds here. Give us a long shot or two, maybe not to win the tournament, but somebody that you're looking at.
Yeah, Robert McIntyre is high on my list. He's 60-1 right now. I could see him maybe even creeping into the top 5 as far as that. He's set plus 750 for that, or even a plus 10, plus 320. I like him a lot. He's had 225s in 2 visits to the Masters.
Len Hochberg, everybody, check out all of his great work, all of his Masters preview content over at rotowire.com, and check him out on Twitter at Len Hochberg. We're going to switch over to Major League Baseball when we come back. All 30 teams in action. Jeff Erickson going to give out his best bets in the MLB on the other side. Coming up next on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the sports betting network.
How about we talk a little Major League Baseball here on Prop Points to close out the show? Make it rain with Adam Shine, by the way, coming up in about 15 minutes at the top of the hour. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson here with you. Jeff's going to give you his best bets for a full MLB Tuesday slate in a moment. But Jeff, first day live update on the one game we have going on in the early window. Tigers all over the Yankees and Carlos Carrasco right now. We're in the top of the 7th, a 5-0 lead for the Detroit Tigers. 4 homers on the board for Detroit, including 3 in a row in the 4th inning. But I know you want to talk, Jeff, a little bit about what we saw yesterday, including in your backyard. The Cincinnati Reds, Hunter Green, dominant last night in a win over the Giants. I'd say arguably, if not indisputably, the best outing of his career.
Yeah, first time. And by the way, I have a huge backyard, so that's why I was able to see all the way up to San Francisco from that yard. But Hunter Green got into the ninth inning, first time in his career he's done that. Almost had a Maddox, Nick. He was at like 84 pitches, I believe, to start the ninth inning. Got the first two outs pretty quickly, and then Jung-Hoo Lee put on a really good at bat against him, and then and then right after that, he gave up another walk, so he got through 8 2/3, but. Man, he's really, really kind of easy, gently getting into that ace category. There are 3 awesome outings in a row for him. Love what he's been doing so far. He was throwing 99 in the ninth inning. That's the thing that caught my eye, too. It was easy 99, too. It wasn't like he was exerting himself. Just beautiful outing there, cooling down the red-hot Giants. So that was, it's fun to watch Hunter Green Day. Many other Reds days aren't so fun. This was a fun day, at least.
Yeah, we'll get another game in that series later tonight. That'll be Nick Lodolo going up against Landon Roop. Elsewhere in the pitching world, Jeff, and this is going to go down as significantly less positive news. Houston Astros losing Spencer Arrighetti out with a fractured thumb. It's still up in the air as far as what kind of timetable we're looking at. I would guess this would be at least a month, if not longer, given that it is a fracture. Happened in batting practice. Took a ball off that thumb. Right. Houston lost again last night to Seattle, now 4-6 on the season. They're hitting .202 as a team, got other pitchers banged up. Not good.
No, not at all. And, they're already down a little bit in terms of their depth, their pitching depth. And, they don't even know tonight if Framber Valdez is going to be good to go. He's battling an illness. So something to watch for there when you're trying to, handicap your games for tonight. It might be a stay away because of that. Arrighetti's going to be out. Ronel Blanco's been knocked around. Hayden Wesneski pitched pretty well last night, actually. And he's someone that's kind of interesting to me. But Luis Garcia had a setback in his rehab. This has been a terrible, awful, no good start to the season for the Astros, who did start terribly last year and recovered from that and won the division. But it just is a reminder, though, that this isn't necessarily the same Astros team as we've seen before. It puts a little bit of urgency to the Lance McCullers rehab, who had a second rehab outing last night, walked 3 in that one there. So he's not quite there. I wouldn't, they weren't really expecting a lot from McCullers, but they may need him right away. Cam Smith hasn't been working out very well. He sat the last 2 days from the starting lineup. I don't understand really what they're doing. This is 2 days in a row that they gave him the day off. How are you making these judgments off of 21 plate appearances? If you're that convinced in spring training that he should be on the roster and he should be playing as your starting right fielder, leave him in there. Let him work through some things. And don't bench him. He's already sat, I think, 4 games now. What are we doing here, Houston? This is like the Cardinals handling a Jordan Walker in his rookie year. That didn't work out so well either.
All right, we got 15 games in Major League Baseball, Jeff. Let's get to the board. I know there's a handful that you're looking at specifically for betting purposes tonight. One of those, Padres Athletics. This one in Sacramento, not in Oakland. Sacramento. Padres minus 135 on the money line. If you like the A's, plus 114. Total in this one sitting at 8.5. Dylan Cease going up against Jeffrey Springs. So what are we looking at in this matchup?
So we've played 4 games in Sacramento so far. All 4 games have gone to the over. Last night was the closest 5-4 game. And we got a tougher pitching matchup today, at least on the Padres side with Dylan Cease on the mound. Springs is a fine starter, but he got knocked around pretty good by the Cubs in his first start in that home ballpark. Is it too soon to be playing trends on this, on the over-under trends? It's going to be a nice day in Sacramento. I think a high of 71. Shouldn't be a weather concern issue there. Later in the summer, the ball should start flying out anymore. I'm wondering, when do the totals start creeping up? They haven't yet. It's still at 8.5. Last I saw was minus 105 to play that over 8.5. I'll go ahead and jump in on that there. I know the Padres might not have Jackson Merrill again, sat out yesterday with a hamstring issue. For me, though, I'm going to play this trend. I know it's kind of a squarish thing to do this early on, but I suspect you're going to start seeing totals in double-digit totals in this ballpark later on this season.
Yeah, like you said, Jackson Merrill still day-to-day. They have not clarified his status for tonight. Next off day for the Padres is Thursday. All right, it's Paul Skeens Day, Jeff. We got the Cardinals at the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight. Fun game in the NL Central. Sonny Gray on the other side of Paul Skeens. Cardinals plus 114 on the money line. Pirates minus 135. No, you're looking at a strikeout prop here.
Yeah, I am. And it's the Cardinal side. It's Sonny Gray. As much as I love Skeens, Sonny Gray struck out 9 in his last outing. His outing didn't look good because he gave up 5 runs, but mostly it's because he was left in 1 inning too long. They had played an extra inning game the day before, and they tried to get 1 more inning out of him. It didn't work. But the Pirates strike out 25% of the time, 25.3 to be specific. I'm going to go with an alt line on Sonny Gray, go over 7.5 Ks, get it at plus 145. If you want to play the regular strikeout line, it's a little bit at minus money at 6.5. So I thought I'd try to get a better payout there and try to go with the alt line on Sonny Gray. I also I would play around with the under in this game as a whole as well. I think there's some fun. I think this should be a really fun pitching matchup.
Got another fun pitching matchup in Atlanta later tonight. That is Zach Wheeler going up against Chris Sale, as you'd expect. Given that pitching matchup and given the Braves' struggles, got a low total here, sitting at an even 7. That is minus 120 to the under. Close on the money line, though. Braves minus 115, Phillies minus 105. Is this a Zach Wheeler spot for you, Jeff? Are you looking at him to go deep into this game?
Yeah, and I want to focus on the pitching matchup on both sides here, too, because the money line's interesting. The Braves are at 1-8, who haven't scored a run since Friday, are minus 115 on the money line here. But that's because Chris Sale's on the mound. Even though he has a 5.40 ERA, he has a 12-1 K to walk and a 110 whip. Pretty good numbers there. But Wheeler dominates against the Braves. If you go to RotoWire on this, the daily lineup page, we have a link there, matchups to target and avoid. You click through that, and you will see a slew of Braves hitters that you want to avoid against Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler against these Braves, their collective line is 201, on base at 240, slugging at 359, 75 Ks and 234 at bats. The Braves are not hitting the ball well right now. They got shut up by Cal Quantrill, who I last checked is Cal Quantrill on Saturday. And they got rained out Sunday. They were off yesterday. So it's been a long time since they've done anything well. They're still plus 160 to miss the playoffs, by the way. I thought that was interesting. But I'm going to go out on this one with Zach Wheeler. I'm going to go over 18.5 outs. So he has to get at least 1 out in the 7th inning for this one to cash. It's at 18.5 outs recorded at plus 125.
All right, Jeff, real quick before we get to our G-Bank best bets of the night. We got 2 games with the highest total on the board, 9.5. That is Brewers at Rockies, Orioles at Diamondbacks. If I told you one of those games is going over, which one would it be?
I would lean on the Orioles and Diamondbacks just because I trust those lineups better. I think Merrill Kelly puts the ball in play a lot. Charlie Morton gets Ks. And man, he got knocked around pretty good. 9.72 ERA. Arizona's got a great lineup. So let's go with the over on that one.
All right, there we go. Both those teams top 10 in runs scored, both hitting well above league average so far this season. League average up a little bit, though, Jeff, at 238. All right, it's time for our G-Bank best bets of the night. They're brought to you by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN, and G-Bank is up in the ante with up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. First, new customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from opening their account receive a $250 bonus. If you spend $50K on gaming and sports app loads within 30 days of opening that account, you receive another $500 bonus. So potentially $750 in bonus cash coming your way via G-Bank. You can apply now at vsin.com/Gbank. That's vsin.com/Gbank, subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions apply. Jeff, I know you got a Masters bet in the holster. Where are we going?
Yeah, I'm going to trail my friend Len Hochberg, who was touting Cam Smith earlier there. But we'll go top 10. Cam Smith, top 10, plus 360 over at DraftKings. You know, he's just well-suited for that course. His short game's great. Let's go that route.
Okay. I talked about it earlier in the show, Jeff. I am taking the Golden State Warriors to cover the 9.5 tonight on the road at the Phoenix Suns. Doesn't matter. All the Suns do right now is lose games and lose games big. So Warriors minus 9.5 at Phoenix. That number's already up to 10 at some shops. So get that in while you can. That's going to do it for the Tuesday edition of Prop Points. We'll be back at you tomorrow afternoon. Make it rain with Adam Shine coming up next here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.